Hey, good morning. Welcome to Nasdaq IR Insight Live. I'm your host, Will Briganti, here at Nasdaq's office in Atlanta, Georgia. And joining me today as my guest is Margarita Ignacio. Margarita is in Chicago, and she's an analyst with Nasdaq IR Solutions, and she covers the industrial sector. Margarita, welcome to the program.
Hi, Will. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's kick off today. Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about the industrials manufacturing sector, which you cover. Earnings season is just about to wrap up. What were some of the key highlights that you and the team have noticed?
Yeah, I would say it was a strong quarter overall for the industrials. Among the S&P 500 industrial companies, over 80% of those companies beat EPS estimates, and of those same companies, over 3/4 of them beat on the top line. I would say that the conglomerates and transportation stocks definitely took leadership in this space. Just keep in mind that the industrials were definitely among the worst performers in the first half of the year. So I think this recent round of earnings has certainly provided some improvement to that. And I would say also that, as far as outlook, undoubtedly, incremental margin concerns and rising costs were definitely cited for those that missed estimates, as well as what was behind the majority of those companies that have decreased their earnings outlooks for the next quarter and the full year.
Absolutely. Let's talk trading for a second. So obviously 13Fs have recently been published. Did you pick up on any interesting patterns from the investment community, any interesting inflow or outflow trends that you guys picked up?
Yeah, I would say there were no clear trends, but of those to note, I would say there's just generally a lack of conviction buying from traditional value and growth players. Yeah. I think that's really just a reflection of sentiment in the market, some perhaps de-risking or even really sidelined. And I think that's also reflected in some of the short interest data that we've seen. The industrials are among the top, have seen that, some of the biggest increases year to date, I think about 24% in short interest. So I think it definitely reflects that sentiment. But we have seen some longer term value investors buying on those dips, perhaps, showing maybe a greater willingness to ride out any upcoming volatility.
Got it. Actually, that's a good segue into my final question, Margarita. Before we wrap up, I'd love to get your take on what our viewers should keep in mind or keep on their radar in the near term as they look into the industrials.
Well, I definitely don't think we'll see a downward spiral for the industrials despite some of those headwinds. I think at the very least, the industrials will hold their ground for the back half of this year. With that being said, I think we'll just need to keep a really close eye on trade developments as it relates to NAFTA and China. Some of those talks ongoing today. And depending on the direction of that, could provide some relief or be a complete detriment to the sector for the second half of this year. Another thing we want to keep an eye on are some of those economic indicators. We saw some soft July data for industrial production and ISM manufacturing PMI. So, still very much in expansion mode since the beginning of 2017, but we'll need to keep a really close eye on some of those signals.
All right. Well, terrific overview of the sector for today, Margarita. Thank you so much for that insight. Thanks for joining the program.
Great. Thanks, Will.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this was Margarita Ignacio. She's a senior director at Nasdaq IR Solutions covering industrials. She's based at our Chicago office. For more information on Nasdaq's IR Solutions, our surveillance and advisory services, be sure to visit our website. That's business.nasdaq.com.